The Heart of Art is sponsored in part by the Texas A&M University Art Galleries, which includes the Stark and Forsyth Galleries located inside the MSC. The galleries provide a variety of opportunities to experience art exhibitions, events, and hands-on activities. More information at uart.tamu.edu.
The Heart of Art, scoping the Brazos Valley for the best artists and bringing them to your radio. Howdy, Eggland. Welcome back to the KMU studios. My name is Hector Nino, and you're listening to The Heart of Art. Today in the studios, we have a very special guest. Her name is Cynthia Bradford. She is a middle school theater and choir teacher at International Leadership Texas. She's also a board member at the theater company, where she's an active participant both on stage and in the background. Has gotten recognized on TikTok for making content of her own life, and she's amassed over 40,000 followers. So, hi, Cynthia. How are you today?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited for our conversation. I mean, this TikTok thing, how did that come about? How did you even start?
So that started during COVID. Actually, our school went immediately after spring break. We went immediately full-time online. Teaching theater online was very difficult to do. It was very difficult to get engagement. There's a delay on Zoom. We were teaching on Zoom. Right. If you've ever had to try to have a conversation or have people sing in unison, it just doesn't work. So I started making some videos, posting them on YouTube, warm-up videos that the kids could do on their own. Wow. And one of my students said, Miss Bradford, you should start a TikTok. And so I started a TikTok, and my family will tell you the first ones are very cringy. They are, I don't know what I'm doing, and they're hard to watch. But it eventually started growing, and when we got back in person, one of the students in my class said, Miss Bradford, you need a manager. Let me take over what you're going to do. So she would send me TikToks that I needed to do. I told her she needed to get with her math teacher, because she would go through the analytics, and this is what's working, this it doesn't work. And she's very blunt, like, don't ever do a TikTok like that again. Yeah. You know, you need to do more like this. And then she moved on eighth grade. After eighth grade, she went on to high school. So I didn't have her anymore, and I just kind of continued on my own. So,
so you had a whole team behind you.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. They were very difficult to work for.
All right. Well, we'll definitely get more into that a little bit later. But I do want to go into your art. I know you dabble in a lot of art. You have theater, you have music, choir, you also give piano lessons. So where are you from, and which came first, music or theater?
So I got my love of theater from my mother. We were living in Iowa City. My dad was teaching at the University of Iowa at the time. He was teaching ROTC. He was military. And my mother took me to an audition for Sound of Music. She was auditioning. I was auditioning. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew I loved musicals. We would watch West Side Story and Sound of Music, of course. Mm-hmm. And then Annie, I had bright red hair. I knew all the words to Annie. I wanted to be Annie. Right. My parents were in the way of that because Annie was an orphan and I wasn't. But so she took me to this audition. There were hundreds, it felt like hundreds of kids there auditioning, because we were auditioning for the Sound of Music. And again, I had this look. I had bright red hair. I was precocious, and I got the part of Gretel. And that's where it started, was in Iowa City. Then my dad was military. We moved all over, and I continued. That was a good way to make friends, was to get involved with community theater. So I continued that throughout high school and into college, and that's where my passion started.
Awesome. And how old were you for that first production?
I was 5, and my mom was very smart because she wanted me to take piano lessons. We tried it at 5. I hated it. And she said, okay, you don't have to take piano lessons anymore. But we had this big old piano in our house, and I would go over to it. And eventually on my own, I was around 7 or 8, I asked for piano lessons. And I think if she had forced it on me at 5, I wouldn't have continued. Right. But around 7 or 8, I started taking, I competed in competitions throughout high school, took in college, and that's how, and piano and theater just happily merged together.
Yeah.
So.
And what kind of sparked that interest in piano?
I think it was just being around the piano, being around singing. I wanted to marry the two, being able to marry singing and playing together, and I knew I needed lessons. I love one of the things I love about teaching is I love a schedule. I love repetition. I love all of that. And one of the things about piano is that repetition. And I would practice on my own 2 or 3 hours a day. And I just loved the repetition, especially hand-in exercises. It's this rote exercise you do over and over. And I absolutely loved and thrived on that.
Wow, I love that. Well, then you went to BYU, to Brigham Young University, and what did you study there?
So I studied international relations, and I joke with people, it's international politics now. The relations part, they dropped and switched it to politics. And I joke, politics is all theater. So I graduated in that. I did do several theater classes at BYU while I was there. I absolutely loved it. I just never thought of myself as a theater teacher at that point in life. So I went the international relations route, graduated, got a job in the business world. I was not built for the business world. You're sitting at a desk, you're on a computer, you don't get to express yourself very much. So I wish I would have realized earlier. But one thing I tell my students, I'm a good example of this, it's never too late to follow your passion. Wow. And I was much happier when I realized that.
Right. And what series of events kind of led to you making that realization, to making that career switch?
So once I had kids, I quit my job. I had been working for a HR company, and we worked with international clients, and I quit to stay home with my kids. And one of the ways to supplement income was to teach piano lessons out of the house. And we got to the point where I had 50 students coming in and out of the house throughout the week. It was really hard on our family. I loved it, but it was just really hard on my family. And so one of my students' parents had a job opening at their company and offered me a job. And I thought, you know what, I'm ready to get out of the house and work. And it was a desk job, and I was terrible at it. Oh, no. And I was not happy. I wasn't good at it. I felt I had very low self-esteem because I was not intelligent in this area of expertise. I had no expertise. I was studying to get certified in all these different areas. I massively failed the test. Oh, and no. I remember driving home from that test, and I saw a sign for the International Leadership of Texas School. And I thought, oh, that might be a good choice for my son to go there. And the same thought, after I failed this test massively, I looked up, I'm like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate feeling bad about myself. I'm going to look up into teaching. And I was thinking elementary music. So I signed up for a program, an online program, to get your teacher certification. About a week later, I went to interview at International Leadership of Texas for my son to see if I wanted him to go there. And I was speaking with the principal, and she's like, well, we have a job that might actually, she'd asked what I was doing. I said, well, I'm actually trying to get my teaching certificate. And she said, well, as long as you're enrolled in this program and are on track to get your certificate, we have a job that would be perfect. It's teaching choir and theater. It's really hard to find someone who would be qualified to do both. And I said, So I interviewed, got the job, and never looked back.
Wow, perfect. Yeah. In the right place at the right time.
Yes. And I love that experience because I tell my students, you might find yourself in a situation where you're hard on yourself and you think you're not smart and you're not intelligent. That's not the case. You're just not in an area where you can shine. Right. And once you find that area, there's nothing that will limit you. It's just a matter of finding it, and it might take you a few years. It took me 20 years.
Right. So. Yeah. You just got to find your strength.
Yes.
I mean, I love that you're placing your own struggles in your own life and like teaching it to your students as well, apart from just like the content that you're there to teach, right?
Well, you've done theater before. Mm-hmm. Theater is so much more than just what you see on stage. There's so much more behind it. And so I develop a great relationship with my students and in being able to give them life lessons which go hand in hand with theater.
Right. Mm-hmm. Might be a difficult question, but what do you enjoy more? Teaching theater, being on stage, or being in the orchestra pit?
That is a very hard question. So I love being on stage, but there is nothing like that feeling of being in the orchestra pit and being a part of something that is creating this amazing music. Like playing the piano is great, but then you add in the strings, you add in the reeds, you add in the horns, you add in the percussion, you add in all of this. And there are moments in shows where you're playing and you're like, I am part of something that's bigger than me, and this is incredible. And it's the same with teaching. Being on stage, you're a part of something, but you also get to shine and be someone you're not. But teaching and letting your students shine, there's no feeling like that. I swell with pride. That's a phrase I never thought I'd use, but your heart grows because you see these kids both on stage. You see a kid who would never go on stage, but excels at doing the lights or doing the sound. I have students who know more about our lighting system and our sound system than I do at my school. You know, they've run with it. And it's just so fun to see these kids shine in capacities. And you'll have teachers. I had one student that the teacher was always happy to give him over to me because he didn't do well in her class, but he shined in my class. And it was great that he had that avenue of a place to excel and shine where in other areas he might not. So
Right. And there's something for everyone in theater, definitely.
Yes.
So you can find a home there. Do you have any other success stories of students who have had some great results with theater?
Yeah. So one thing that I love in theater, I never force my students to be on stage. I don't want them to have a negative. I'm not going to plop you up on stage if you have anxiety, if this is your biggest fear. So we create moments in class for them to have those opportunities. Again, if you absolutely do not want to be on stage, there are other places that I can put you and have you work. But one of my biggest successes was I get my kids for 3 years. I get them 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I really get to see them grow from 6th to 8th grade. And I've had several students that in 6th grade, they could not even get in front of the class to speak. And by 8th grade, they're competing in monologue competitions.
Wow.
And they're up, and then you can't get them off the stage. And they might not pursue theater any farther than that, but it gives them the confidence to succeed in other areas of life. So that's some of my biggest success stories, is just seeing. In fact, this weekend I went to help at the theater company. I'm on the board. I was volunteering. One of my former students was there getting service hours, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I love theater so much. I want to be around it." And he said, "I got that from your class." And it's not just from me, it's from the entire class, like being part of a greater good. The kids want to continue that as they grow.
Right. That's awesome. That's beautiful to see them taking it outside of the classroom as well.
Absolutely.
All right, you guys, we will be going on a quick break, but do not go anywhere. We will be right back. I feel like you deal a lot with the intersection of music and theater. How important is music to a production? And we know it is, but in what ways would you say?
So a lot of people say they feel through music. And I feel that same way. I feel through music. I get emotions through music. In fact, my kids love to make me cry. We just watched Encanto about 2 nights ago. I'd watched it once. I said, I'm never watching it again because I sobbed. Yes. So my kids put it on. They knew I was going to cry. They were waiting for the moment, and they knew the moment I would cry, and it's when the grandmother and Mirabelle sing at the river. I'm not going to mess up the pronunciation. It's Dos. It's about the butterflies. I can't remember what it's called, but I was sobbing and just, I think they even filmed me. Oh, but because music can speak to you in ways that other things can't. And so I feel music is so important, even in straight plays. Straight plays, if you don't know, are plays where they don't have music in them necessarily, songs. But a lot of directors will find moments to put the music in, so that the audience has another way to feel, not just through the spoken word, but through music. And I think music can touch people in ways that lecturing or things like that don't always work.
Mm-hmm. So you'd say it's like a way for the message to get across easier?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you still get nervous when hitting the stage?
Oh, absolutely. I just auditioned last night. I had an audition last night, and it was for a straight play. And I did a straight play a year ago, but it was a 2-person play. I didn't have to audition for it. It was a special event, and it was called Love Letters, and we just read letters on stage. I'm used to performing in musicals, and when you have feelings, you sing about them, and you don't have to act them necessarily. I mean, you do, but not the depth of a straight play where you have this moment where you're like, here's where I'd break into a song. No, you have to convey that through expressions and through your words. And last night I auditioned for a straight play and I was terrified. I actually made a TikTok about it of my feet. They would not stop tapping. And I made a TikTok of my feet, not stopping tapping because I was so nervous. So I get nervous more for the audition. I still get nervous to perform. And I think that I tell my students that I'm not a science teacher, but I think I remember that energy can't be created or destroyed. Right. And so you're going to have that nervous energy. You can't get rid of it. It's there, but channel it and use it and put it into your performance, put it into your movement, put it into your fingertips, put it into your feet, and use that energy. You can't destroy it, but you can change it. Mm-hmm. And so last night that I was remembering, okay, like just breathe and plant yourself and focus all that energy, So I definitely still get nervous. Yeah. Mostly when I'm doing something to support someone else. So if I'm music directing, auditions terrify me because I have to play on site. Right. I have to sight read music for people auditioning. They're already nervous. They're nervous they're going to forget their words. They're nervous they're going to mess up on their big note. And I want to provide the best experience possible for them to present the best version of themselves. So I get nervous for playing more so.
Yeah, that their success kind of depends on you a little bit.
Yes.
That must be really nerve-wracking. So I know you're a board member at the theater company. What does that exactly consist of?
So this was my final year. I've been on for 6 years. A board term is 3 years, and then you can be renewed for another 3 years. And I think it's actually 7 years because COVID happened in the middle of that. And so they didn't count that year, even though that year we worked harder than ever. But being a board member at a community theater, a lot of it is doing some behind the scenes work. You're volunteering at shows, you're house managing, but you're also ensuring that the legacy of the community theater is preserved, that the mission statement is preserved, that we have grants coming through, and so we kind of do all the behind the scenes, not as fun stuff, but definitely vital to the continuation of the theater. Right. So my term is ending. I know someone else's. We always need people on the board. So even if you're not an actor or you're not a tech person, but you just love theater, those are the best people to have on the board. Mm-hmm. So if you're listening to this and are interested in serving on our board, we have at least 2 openings that I know of coming up in September. And it really is a good way to again, work for the greater good.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here. If you're looking to get involved, make sure to go check it out. I'm sure there's a website they can visit.
Yes, thetheatercompany.com, theater, TRE, company.com. And there are you can click on ways to volunteer.
Great. And this is just like one of the fun questions. Do you have any like funny stories of like mess ups on stage? Maybe someone forgetting their line?
Oh gosh. So I have a couple. So we're actually doing a 10-year reunion of A Little Night Music this summer. So they got as much of the original cast. We did it 10 years ago. Wow. We're doing a reboot this summer. It's the 4th of July weekend. And the opening, so 2 stories in that. Opening night, always a little crazy with costumes, and my skirt, and it's not a comedy, but people at this point in the theater were used to seeing me in comedic roles. I think I had just played Madame Thénardier in Les Mis. She was very crass. The way I played her was very comedic, and this would be on brand for Madame Thénardier, but in Little Night Music, I was a countess. Opening number, we're waltzing, and my skirt just falls off, like completely falls off. And the audience thought it was part of the show because, oh, there's Cynthia Bradford. She's the comedic relief.
Right.
And so I hitch my skirt up, run off stage. Someone pins it on to me, and I go back on without missing a beat. Nice. Same show, there was a mix-up with the costumer, or one of the costumers, and she thought I'd already worn an outfit and was taking it home during intermission to sew for the next show. So I had a quick change about to go on stage, and I have no dress. No. And it's a big, important costume change. I can't wear the dress I'm wearing before. So I'm basically standing backstage, no costume, and people are frantically that we found something, threw it on me. But little things like that. And then another show, Jesus Christ Superstar, Andrew Lloyd Webber show, there's it's a male heavy show. There are 2 women parts. One woman part is Mary Magdalene. She has this amazing song. And then there's another part. It's Woman by the Fire. That was me. I had one solo. That tells you how desperate the women in the show were for this. And I'm getting ready to sing my solo, and one of the 12 apostles isn't on stage. And I'm like, where is he? And the orchestra is vamping. They're playing the same part over and over. And in my mind, this was 3 minutes, waiting for him. And and so I'm like, I'll interpretive dance while I'm waiting. It was so horrible. Nice. And then he shows up and he says his line so I can sing my one line. I was so mad. He was a friend. I was so mad at him. And we go back, and someone had been recording that night. It was 8 counts. It was 8 counts of music. And it felt like 3 minutes, but 8 counts on stage feels forever. So, so yeah.
Yeah, time on stage is a completely different thing.
Yes, yes.
All right. So back to your TikTok. Do you find that it has brought you closer to your students, or maybe even your own children?
So absolutely closer to my students. My children would be very happy if I did not have a TikTok account. And I get it. A lot of times they'll say, what if grandma had a TikTok account? My mom, I got my love of theater from her, but also in high school, she ran a singing telegram service and showed up to my high school in a clown suit, in a gorilla costume. She showed up to my English class. We were reading Great Expectations, and she had told the English teacher, oh, I have this great idea. I could show up as, I can't remember her name, is Mrs. Haversham, who lived in the attic in a wedding dress. My mom showed up to my senior English class in her wedding dress. So I appreciate that. Like, wow. It is horrible having your mom, this is like on a world stage. I am creating content, and so my kids, and I think even my husband might be happier if I didn't have a TikTok. But as for my students, it's brought us closer. It's gotten them engaged. They're proud of me. So I made a TikTok once, showed it to my principal. It was about a school event. He was so excited. He showed it to the superintendent, and I'm like, no. And the superintendent follows me. I'm like, no, I don't want this, because a lot of teachers get in trouble for some of the things they do on TikTok. I'm very careful with the music I select, with the content I do. I'm aware of my audience. Some teachers get a little lofty and forget who their audience is. And but I still didn't want the superintendent following me. But my students will ask, can I be in your TikTok, Miss Bradford? Can I be in your TikTok? I'm like, I need a written note from your parent. One of them had their parents message me on TikTok. Yes, you have permission. So nice. I don't like to include their faces just because I get nervous about that. Like, even with parent permission, I get nervous about that. But I do include their voices. They come up with fun ideas, or they're like, Miss Bradford, we need to do this trend, or you need to do this trend. And then they'll flat out tell me, Miss Bradford, you need to make this video private. Like, you don't ever want to delete a TikTok. I learned that from my students, but you can make them private. They're like, Miss Bradford, private that right now. I'm like, okay, I will private it. I trust you. So yeah.
I love that. For those who have not seen your content just yet, how would you describe it?
It's very eclectic. I don't follow any of the rules. They're like, you need to pick a niche, you need to pick a genre. I think my content under my name, so I'm Drama Llama Mama on TikTok, but underneath you can put, some things to describe you. And I'm a mom of a Marine. I post content about, I just went and met him off of his deployment. I posted content off of that. I'm a runner. I do a lot of running content, but most of my content is either theater or teacher related. So if I'm in a show, you get the behind the scenes. I recently did a show with Blinn College. I was their music director for Title of Show over at Blinn. Awesome. And I did a lot of behind the scenes things on that. And so most of my content, depending on the time of year, and I actually think this has served me well, is that I'm not so niche, because a lot of teachers run out of content during the summer. They don't have anything to talk about. Yeah. But I focus on my running and my theater things in the summer, or I'll save up some content. But so I'm more rounded than TikTok, I think, wants you or tells you to be, but it's worked well for me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think different people are finding some relatability with you. I think you posting about your everyday life, I think, is very inspirational to a lot of people. Yeah, I love that for you.
Well, and honestly, the ones where I'm not done up, where my makeup's not done, where I don't look great, the ones where I look terrible and I'm making fun of myself. There's one I did, I think a year ago. I was on a run and I was hiding, and people thought the TikTok was going to be, I'm like, I'm hiding from this guy. And they thought it was because I was scared. No, I was embarrassed because he was lapping me, walking his dog while I was running. And I look terrible and I'm making fun of how slow I'm running. But that's what people relate to, not so much the get ready with me and my makeup's perfect. And,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you're doing you regardless of whether your family wants it or whatever society wants you to do. Like, you're just doing you, what you love. And I love that for you. How do you juggle it all? I mean, you're a mother, you're a teacher, you're a board member. Do you have time for it all?
So that's a good question right now, because last week I had nothing going on. We just had graduation. My son graduated high school, end of school year. And I had nothing scheduled last week. I don't do well not being busy. So this is so funny. On Friday, I'd had enough. I scheduled 4 races over the summer, trail races. I decided to audition for a show. I'm already in a show that the rehearsals haven't started. I'm doing a theater camp with a friend. And so I did some research on that. But the week when I'm not busy, I don't do well. I kind of implode. And so I like having things to do. I love being busy. I don't do well without a schedule. Like I said, that's why I love teaching. I have a schedule. I know what I'm doing. I'm busy. So I find I work better when I'm busier.
Mm-hmm. So that's definitely a choice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Awesome. Well, do you have anything about art, about the theater community that you want our audience to know?
We have a wonderful theater community, wonderful artistic community in this town, in Bryan and College Station. We have so many outlets, and if you're looking to get involved, the best way is just to show up. Just show up at a community theater. We have 2, I think 3, a third one just started. We have some great community theaters in this town. Show up and say, hey, I'm here to help. Where can you use me? You don't have to perform on stage to be involved. If you're new to town, this is a great way to meet people. If you're a college student and you need a break from studying, this is a great way to get involved. But honestly, some of the best performances I've given are at home in the kitchen when I'm cleaning, or in the shower singing. And it just find your outlet, because again, that's why I started my TikTok account. I needed an outlet during COVID. My students needed a way to connect. Find a way to channel your creativity, whether it's through performing arts, whether it's through visual arts. We have a great community of First Friday where people can display their art each month, and that's one of the things I've just absolutely loved about this community is there's so many ways to channel that creative outlet.
Right, you got to release it somehow.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Cynthia Bradford, thank you so much for stopping by and talking to us about your artistic journey.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to share the stage with you again.
Yes, sometime soon. I'm Hector Nino, and you've been listening to The Heart of Art, a production of 90.9 KAMU FM. You can find all of our shows anytime at kamu.tamu.edu.
The Heart of Art is sponsored in part by the Texas A&M University Art Galleries, which includes the Stark and Forsyth Galleries located inside the MSC. The galleries provide a variety of opportunities to experience art exhibitions, events, and hands-on activities. More information at uart.tamu.edu.